Among the countless paths hidden in the misty forests of the Appalachian Mountains, there is one that leads to an old suspension bridge shrouded in legend. They call it Raven's Crossing. Its weathered planks and rusted cables inspire fear, but it's not just the bridge's frailty that keeps people away. This bridge is something more. Anyone who dares to cross it loses everything that once made them who they were. The old-timers in Elm Hollow, the only town nearby, avoid speaking of the place. It draws only outsiders, journalists, thrill seekers, or those running from their own lives. They all think they can handle it, but no one ever returns the same. Charlie Hayes was one such outsider. When he arrived in Elm Hollow on a sweltering June evening, he had no idea that the bridge didn't just steal memories. It erased a person's very essence, replacing it with infinite possibilities. Somewhere deep in the misty Appalachian Mountains stood a rickety suspension bridge spanning a dark, yawning gorge. The locals in the nearby town of Elm Hollow called it the Raven's Crossing, though few dared approach it. Time had worn its wooden planks, leaving gaps wide enough to glimpse the rushing river far below. Rust and ivy crept along its iron cables, and the wind whistled through it like a mournful song. But what truly kept people away wasn't its precarious state. It was its curse. They said that anyone who crossed the bridge would forget their life, their name, their family, their past. But in the empty spaces where memories once were, new ones would take root, memories of lives they'd never lived. One humid summer evening, a stranger arrived in Elm Hollow. His name was Charlie Hayes, an investigative journalist for a magazine specializing in the paranormal. His editor had sent him to dig up the truth about Raven's Crossing, and Charlie, always chasing the next big story, couldn't resist. The locals weren't welcoming. In the diner, an older man named Earl took a drag on his cigarette and warned him, "Boy, that bridge will chew you up and spit you out as someone you won't recognize. You want your story? Fine. But don't come crying when you lose your damn self out there." Charlie, with a smirk and notebook in hand, replied, "What if I want to be someone else?" Earl just shook his head, muttering something about city folks never listening. The next morning, the air was thick with fog as Charlie hiked to the bridge. He stood at the edge, staring at the weathered planks and feeling the unsettling pull of the gorge below. His footsteps echoed as he stepped onto the first board, and the world seemed to shift. Halfway across, the air grew heavy. The bridge groaned under his weight, and Charlie felt a sharp, aching pressure in his skull. Images flooded his mind. Scenes from a childhood he didn't recognize. A little boy playing baseball in a sunny yard. A red bicycle he'd never owned. A woman's voice calling him Tommy. Charlie froze. These weren't his memories. By the time he reached the other side, his head was spinning. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his temples as flashes of a life that wasn't his overtook him. His name wasn't Charlie anymore. He was Tommy Jensen, a high school teacher from Ohio. He remembered grading papers, laughing with colleagues, and proposing to a woman named Lisa. But somewhere, deep down, a faint voice whispered, "This isn't real." Tommy, Charlie, wandered back into Elm Hollow, his notebook forgotten. He sat in his motel room, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. The memories of being a journalist were slipping away, replaced by warm thoughts of Lisa and lesson plans. He tried to hold on to the fragments of his old life, but they were like water through his fingers. That night he returned to the diner, his eyes hollow. Earl took one look at him and sighed. "You went across, didn't you?" Tommy nodded, unsure whether to cry or laugh. I think I'm a teacher now, from Ohio," Earl grunted. "Happens every time. Folks don't just lose memories. They gain the life they could have had, or maybe should have had. That bridge ain't cursed. It's a crossroads." Tommy sat silently, the weight of his new identity settling on him. The days turned into weeks, and Tommy tried to embrace his new reality. He imagined leaving Elm Hollow, starting fresh. But late at night, the remnants of Charlie Hayes clawed at his mind. The journalist's instincts wouldn't let go. One evening, he made a decision. He had to cross the bridge again. Maybe he could get his old life back, or at least find out the truth. As he stepped onto the bridge, it felt different this time. The air hummed, the pressure in his head returning with a vengeance. But when he reached the other side, he wasn't Charlie. He wasn't Tommy. He was Lauren, a marine biologist from California. Her memories washed over him, her lab, her passion for whales, the ocean breeze on her face. Panicked, Lauren Charlie Tommy stumbled back toward the bridge. Each time he crossed, he became someone new. A retired soldier, a Wall Street broker, a struggling artist. Each life was rich, vivid, and complete, but none of them felt like his. He scrawled notes in the margins of his notebook, trying to piece together who he truly was. But the more he crossed, the harder it became to remember the first name he'd had. One night, he returned to the diner, now going by the name Nathan, a carpenter from Minnesota. Earl stared at him, his face a mix of pity and resignation. "Kid, you're trapped now. That bridge ain't just a door to other lives. It's a mirror of what could have been. You keep walking it, and soon there won't be anything left of you to come back to." But Nathan didn't listen. By the time he crossed the bridge for what felt like the 100th time, Nathan, Charlie, realized the truth. The bridge wasn't just stealing memories, it was unraveling him. Each step across stripped away a piece of his soul, leaving behind a patchwork of lives that didn't belong to him. As he stood in the middle of the bridge, staring into the abyss below, he heard a voice, soft, almost kind. "You've crossed too many times. You don't belong anywhere now. But the bridge always needs a guardian." The wind howled as the planks beneath his feet dissolved into mist, and he felt himself falling, not down, but into the bridge itself. Now when travelers step onto Raven's Crossing, they feel a presence, a faint whisper in the wind, guiding them to lives they could have lived. And somewhere deep in the creaking wood, the last remnants of Charlie Hayes wait, watching and remembering all the lives he never had.